Hi. Yes, that's lounge music. Why do you play in lounge music when you're closed? Anyway, here we go. A subject everybody thinks they know the answer to because, well, it just seems so obvious. But if you actually look into it, you find out it isn't. That's every subject. But let's get on with it. Should it be legal for people to be able to buy, own, and have some reason to use a shotgun with a barrel this long? You know, a flare gun, but real, a metal one that can fire shotgun shells. Is there a real purpose for that you can think of other than screwing around? Okay, next. Should you be able to have a rifle that's really short because it can be concealed? And how is that any different from a pistol? Okay, can you have a long-barreled pistol? Okay, it seems a little ridiculous. Okay. Should you be legally permitted to have a machine gun? A real one, not a stupid liberal mixing up words and hoping you don't look up definitions off of Wikipedia. Real, full-on machine guns. And did you know you can build something that simulates better than a bump stock, a machine gun? It's called a Gatling gun. It's perfectly legal in the United States. And can be made more effective if you really put the work into it than a normal machine gun. The thing is, you can make one. It's a hand crank. It's a Gatling gun. It's a Gat. And what about, I guess I should throw rocket launchers in there because that's also banned and controlled because they're really just flare guns that you can fire grenades out of. They're called grenade launchers, not rocket launchers. Did you know you're allowed legally to make a potato cannon? And you're allowed legally to have a mortar launcher. And full-on tank cannons. They're not illegal. And in many cases not regulated, depending on what they are. And did you know that you can make a sawed-off short-barrel shotgun as long as it's a muzzle loader? Does exactly the same thing, and you can have 2 or 3 barrels and maybe just as effective as using a double-barreled, 12-gauge shotgun pistol or just a single shot, which is what a lot of people want to have to play with. Now we're going to get to the subject of the video that you read in the title. Suppressors and silencers. Seems like a pretty simple thing. They're obviously supposed to be illegal. Oh, wait a minute, they're not. You can legally get one in the United States pretty easily, and in some cases, depending on the design of them, especially if they're permanently integrated into the body of the firearm, they're not regulated. Well, they are, but they aren't. It's considered part and parcel cost when you buy the weapon because this is how it's regulated. The U.S. government requires you to pay a $200 tax to have these prohibited items. All of them require a $200 tax. I can legally own and in the city of Portland, Oregon, with a concealed weapons permit because they don't draw a distinction between hand cannons and a .22 caliber pistol with, blanks in it. No, they don't. It's the same damn illegal act. They equate me firing a blank with me firing an .81 caliber bullet because that's what a shotgun shell is. If you put in a short barrel gun like that, you might just well not have a neck down and just have it be an .81 caliber pistol. An elephant pistol, an elephant derringer. It's a $200 tax in the United States to have one, and most states, 42 of them, don't regulate a lot of these things or regulate them at all. Specifically, silencers aren't regulated really at all in the states. You just have to have the ATF approve of it. And if you're in a position or you buy a product where the tax is paid in the item and you really don't have to do anything with it, you have to fill out paperwork or you don't, depends on where you are. You can just get one. And I'd like to point out that a silencer can be made out of an oil filter. And that is not illegal according to the ATF and everybody else because once you take it off, it's just a busted oil filter. You didn't alter it, you just repurposed it. Yes, that's actually been done in court. Yes, they can successfully prosecute you, but if you just have and literally once you fire it through, it's a broken oil filter, but that's it. This is again like regulating whether or not I can have a short barrel pistol when I can make one out of water pipe. Or I can just go ahead and make a real shotgun barrel length, which is just a 2 foot long, 2 foot and 2 inch long barrel with the same thing. These regulations are to keep things out of the hands of people when legally you can own them, depending on how they're presented. So let's go on with this. How much do you actually reduce the sound level from a silencer? 7 decibels to 32 decibels? What is it? What about 17 to 24? An average of 20 decibels? Well, peak sound level, meaning the actual shot itself, the part that can actually hurt your hearing, may be reduced a great deal. But the average noise over the long wave shape may not be much, but it's more effective maybe for that very bright, hard shot than the hearing protection you wear. Using store-bought silencers, you have to pay a fee, you have to fill out paperwork, blah, blah, blah. You can use earplugs and you don't have to have them. If you're trying to keep yourself from being heard, they don't reduce the sound of the bullet if it's at a long range, meaning if you fire them through a rifle or a reasonably good pistol with modern ammunition, not black powder, which is the most common form that was used when this rule was passed in the 30s, the bullets are going so fast that they're breaking the sound barrier. A pellet gun can make the same loud noise. If it's a 22 caliber pellet gun or even a 17 and it gets above the speed of sound, it can do that. It will do that. Or you can just diesel the pellet and it will exceed the speed of sound and make the same damn crack. These things don't actually drop the sound level very much. You know what does? Using slower bullets, heavier ones. A shotgun can be suppressed very easily as long as the projectile or projectiles come out at a lower speed. In fact, it works very well on shotguns. But then again, so does lobbing a bullet slowly that's heavy or a mortar. And of course, as I mentioned, mortars aren't illegal. Neither are tanks. Depending on which one you get, you can legally own a tank with a cannon in it. 42 of the 50 states allow you to have silencers. California, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, and D.C. outlaw them. Several cities do as well. But what does this accomplish? How many times before 1934 were silencers used? Now remember, silencers are only really effective. I'm not even saying more. I mean at all effective. If you're firing bullets that are going lower than the speed of sound, which means they have a limited range. Either it's a really big bullet, like a 50 caliber or 45, over a really long range, and you're deliberately making it go as slow as possible, which is kind of stupid if you're trying to kill somebody. That's not sniper. Or, well, that's it. So, how often was it used? They were found, and in some cases used, to commit crimes by deliberately by buying specific cartridges that were lower power and lower speed. A lot of the times they literally used smokeless powder, low speed targeting loads, and used them at really close proximity. Putting them on a long-range rifle doesn't do any dang good and actually can have an effect on whether or not you'll hit the target at all. Next, it doesn't make the sound go away at their end, but it does confuse the origin of the shot. But then again, Paddock shot up an entire city, and people couldn't figure out where the shots were coming from because of the echoes. So, and no, that wouldn't have helped him much either. All he had to do was make sure the cadence was just right, or accidentally hitting it, not being a machine gun, and it made it really hard to figure out where he was, because by the time the sounds echoed, they were running into the same sound wave from the next shot. Which is really scary to think about, because it literally made it to where people were thinking shots were coming from several different angles at the same time. 1934, the United States federal statute started to require a 30-year mandatory minimum sentence for possession of a silencer in a crime. Not possession, not use of a silencer in a crime. Very, very key component here. Possession of a silencer was a separate crime during a crime. And the way they worded it, if you committed any crime and were in possession of it but didn't use it, it was still a crime that could be up to 30 years. What kind of crime? Being in possession of it. It's a crime to be in possession of it because we can charge you with a crime you're charged with the crime of possessing a silencer while possessing one. No, that isn't a misinterpretation of the law. It's a 10-year sentence, maybe, for avoiding a $200 permit. Back then it was a lot of money. These days people just do it as part of the cost of buying one. The ATF has licensed 130 million silencers in the United States. That's $260 million for them. Less than 0.01% of homicides involve silencers in any way. What is the anyways? Okay, here we go. 1995 to 2005. Of the 553 federal prosecutions of cases that had the word silencer listed or suppressor, they prefer the word silencer, even though it doesn't do that, and they deliberately pick a non-descriptive term. They listed them as involved in a crime, but 136 were simply for possessing it. Now, let me explain this to you. You're holding it. You're not committing a crime. But because you are holding it, that's a crime. So the act of holding it is the act of holding it while committing the crime of holding it. I'm not kidding. That literally is how the rule was interpreted. Because some of them were arrested on suspicion of committing a crime, therefore it's a criminal act and you can be thrown in prison for 30 years. And then were exonerated of the original accusation, so it was no longer a crime to have the possession of the silencer. So they looped back and said, we've charged them with a crime of possessing it during the crime of possessing it. That's literally a recursive joke. $200 permit. Or components thereof. That means if they had pieces that you could potentially put together, yes, they pushed it. That's over a 10-year period of time, and there were literally 20 cases, 20, that were actually using a silencer in a crime. Not that it was hard to prove it, that there was any crime at all. The other cases, almost all of them, were just possession of it. No actual complaint, because the original complaint was bogus. They used it as leverage to get them to confess to something so they could clear a book. Possession of an untaxed silencer is punished by 30 years in prison because we can claim that was a crime by not getting taxed. Of course, that changed, right? 1995 to 2004, guns equipped with silencers are half as likely to be actively used. Half as likely to be used by someone with a prior record because they're trying to avoid the extra punishment of 30 years. A third as likely to be used to kill or injure anyone compared to any gun at all without a silencer. Why? Because putting it on a gun or physically having it, or having it not at the site this happened, but at your home or at a friend's house or a relative's house, was immediately potentially 30 years in prison if somebody pushed it. What is this law used for? To throw people in prison for simply having an oil filter with a hole in it. And yes, one of them on evidence, the hole was in the wrong location, so it was never used as a silencer. Other possession cases involved, I'm not kidding, a type of washer that has a shape that's conducive for use as a silencer if you stack them right. Yeah. Where was it? At the auto parts shop that the guy was at. You're in possession of a silencer. The room is filled with every kind of washer we use in making any kind of car work, and an oil filter. You can't put them in the oil filter. Meanwhile, you can buy the parts for a oil filter cleaner unit using magnets. It's a silencer with magnets stuck in it. You take it apart, take out the magnets, you've got a silencer. The connector on it is almost identical to the one that's used for about half the guns. And they also sell you an adapter for, quote-unquote, cleaning and reaming the threads. It attaches on the end of an AR-15. So, let's review. All this does is reduce the noise level about the same as it would if you were wearing hearing protection, which may be really, really useful. The main reason people use it when they pay the $200 stinking fee to get one, which is all they ever do. A lot of them just contact the ATF and say, yeah, I'm going to make a silencer, I got the permit. You get the permit first, you pay the $200 tax stamp, and then you build one. That's it. You can buy one or own or make one. They just make one. It's $200 either way, minimum. So why not just make them? They get a permit to stick a freaking oil filter on their gun. Next. This is so they can go without wearing earplugs or make sure they can wear earplugs. It doesn't affect anything. Some of them make really low-speed bullets come out, way subsonic. Why? Because they want to fire silenced in an area where people call the cops every time they hear a gunshot. Because that kind of happens. So they make it quiet enough and use really low-power bullets that don't even have a range of 500 feet. Or even 50 feet in some cases. Why? Because they want to go plinking in the backyard, and they don't want to use an air gun because air guns require too much maintenance, and you can get bullets cheap. And that's literally the explanation they give if the cops are ever called. And they show them their stupid $200 tax stamp and literally hold up, I'm not kidding, an oil filter. This is like outlawing pipes to keep me from making a 12 gauge. This is dumb. And again, it's not... Most of the time they prosecute them in a recursive way. They're prosecuting them because they can prosecute them. If they don't prosecute them, they're not guilty of a prosecutable offense. So they prosecute them so they can prosecute them. That's all, folks.